Hello again. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy over here for EliTheComputerGuy.com, and today's class is loops in PHP programming. So we are now about 10 classes into this PHP programming track, and so now we are going to be talking about loops. Loops are where in PHP programming you tell the PHP interpreter to keep doing something until some condition has been met. So many times loops are used to do things like count. So today I'm going to show you two examples in the demonstration on how you use these loops. One is simply to count up till 10, and then the other is to show you how to create a math program that will show you how long it will take in order to pay off a house if you buy one. So if you give me a second, we're going to dive into this class, loops in PHP programming. As always, it will not be that complicated as long as you follow along with what I'm saying. So as I've talked about in other segments of this track, I'm trying to keep all these classes very simple for you. So although there may be multiple ways of doing something in the PHP programming language, many times I will only show you one way, and that is to keep you from getting confused. So when we talk about loops in PHP programming, there are multiple ways to do loops. But today I'm only going to show you how to do what are called while loops. While loops. So there are different ways of doing loops, but today we are only going to do while loops. And again, that is to keep it simple for you so that you don't get frustrated and just give up on all this. While loops are very, very useful for you, and if you understand how to use while loops, you can do a lot of very, very interesting things. So basically what the while loop does is it says while some condition, keep doing this. So it's a loop. So it will keep doing a command while some condition is whatever. Now, in order to do while loops, most of the times we will use the increment ability within the PHP programming language. What the increment ability is that if you do plus plus after a variable, it will add plus 1 to that variable. So if we have a variable var, and we have set the variable var to equal 1, so the value of the variable var is 1. If you do var plus plus, it will then be 1 plus 1, and then it will set the value of that variable to that, and it will now be 2. And then when it loops around again, since it's now 2, if you plus plus an additional 1, it will then be 3. And then it will be 4, and then 5, and then 6, and 7, then 8, then 9. Plus plus, and I'll show you this when we go onto the computer and do the demonstration, auto increments the variable's value by 1. So this is a very, very useful thing when we are doing these while loops. So basically, the idea with the while loop is what we're going to do is first we are going to create a variable, and then we will set the value of the variable to 1. For a basic while loop. So we do $var equals 1. Creates the var variable, sets the value to 1. Then we say while, and then we do parentheses. So when you're doing the while statement, we're going to do parentheses. And what we say is we say while the value of the variable var is less than or equal to 10, and then we close the parentheses. So these are the conditions. While var is less than or equal to 10, continue doing what we're about to tell you to do. So then we use one of those squiggly brackets, and we say print, and then we simply print the value of var, and then do semicolon. So while the value of var is less than or equal to 10, print var, semicolon. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say var plus plus. And so after it's printed the value of var, it then will auto increment the value of var by 1, and then you do semicolon, and then you close the squiggly brackets. So what happens is we've set the value of the variable var to 1. While var is less than or equal to 10, it will print out the value of var. It will increment, and then it will print it out again. So basically what you're going to get is when this script runs, it'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's what will happen. It will just simply print out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now again, this may not seem complicated or sophisticated, but this will be very, very, very useful in the future. The idea here is that while this is incrementing, it continues going through the loop, and then once it's finished with the loop, it will simply stop. So this is all there is to a while loop. We'll get a little more complicated when I get on the computer, but I want you guys to understand how this works. So all you do is say while, parentheses, and then the variable that you're using for the condition. Then you give a condition. Then you give what the number is. You close a parentheses. You do the bracket. You say what you want PHP to do, and then you auto increment, and then you close the bracket. So while, parentheses, bracket, and this is what will be able to allow you to do loops. When we get into more complicated things in the future, this will be very, very useful. Now, remember, with these conditionals, we talked about conditionals before. So it's important to understand and remember what the conditionals are. So the conditionals are greater than, or less than, greater than. Equal to is two equal signs, or not equal to is an exclamation point equal sign. You can also have less than or equal to, or greater than and equal to. Why this is very important is in that prior example, if I said var is less than 10, then it would keep counting until the variable is less than 10, which would mean it would count up till 9. If we do variable is less than or equal to 10, then it will count up and it will go to 10. So this is one of the things that you do have to remember once you start doing PHP programming is you don't have to know ultra complicated math. You don't have to know calculus and trigonometry and all that, but you do have to have a basic understanding of math. And if you're a little confused, just play around. So sometimes make it so the var is less than 10 and sometimes make it less than or equal to. But this less than or equal to or greater than or equal to really can help you out sometimes so that you don't have problems. But this is the basic concept with while loops. Again, while loops, all you do is you do while, parentheses, the variable condition, then you do squiggly bracket, you tell it what you want the while loop to do, then you auto increment, and then you're done. It's basically that simple. So now that I've explained while loops and auto increment, we're going to go on the computer and I'm going to show you how this works in the real world. So I'll use Notepad, I will upload the scripts to my PHP server on GoDaddy, and you'll see how this works. The two examples that I'm going to use in the demonstration, the first one is the most basic, simple while loop you can do. Basically, again, all it's going to do is count. It's going to count 1 through 10 and then stop. It's not complicated, but I want you to get an idea of how the while loops work. Then I'm going to do something a little more complicated so you can start to understand a little bit of the power of while loops. With the next example I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how to create a calculator to find out how many years it will take to pay off a house. So if you buy a house for, let's say, $300,000 and you have a 5% interest rate and you pay $24,000 a year, this will show you how much you owe year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and then all the way down, and will show you how many years it will take for you to pay off that house if you're paying a 5% interest rate and also paying $24,000 a year in order to try to pay off your house. That will show you a little bit more of the power. Again, when you are looking at that particular example, I am not getting really sophisticated on the math, so I'm sure the math is a little screwy. I just want you to get an idea of how the while loops work and why they can be very powerful and useful. So with that, let's go onto the computer. I'll show you how this works. And like I say, while loops are very, very cool. So here we are back at my Windows 7 computer, and I have Notepad++ already open, and I've already created the file for the script loop.php. So this is the file that we'll use for both demonstrations today. Now with the demonstration today, I'm going to be hard coding the variable values. So at this point you already know how to create HTML forms and send values to the variables from there. So if you want to play around and create your own little calculator programs, you should be able to do that by now once you understand how this looping works. So the first thing that I'm going to do, as always, is we have to create the actual PHP script. So we open the PHP script, and what I tell you should always do is hit enter a few times and then close the PHP script. This makes sure that you don't forget to do that in the future. Again, all of us computer guys, it's really easy to forget a little question mark bracket if you're not thinking about it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable year. So we create the variable year and we set the value of the variable to 1. So this will be year 1. And so that's the variable that we will be dealing with. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say while. So this starts the while loop, and then we say parentheses, and then we say year is less than or equal to 10, close parentheses. So what this is saying is while the value of the variable a year is less than or equal to 10, then do what we're about to tell it to do. So you do the squiggly bracket, and then all we're going to do is we're going to give it the print, and then we say, let's say year, and then we print the value of the variable year. And then remember, since we're doing HTML, this will be printed out on an HTML screen. We have to put in some HTML coding. So we're going to do, so it's going to say the year, so it'll print year, and then the value of year. So it'll say year 1, and then the next line year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, etc. So we close the parentheses, and then we do semicolon. Always remember to close parentheses and do semicolon. Now what we're going to do is we're going to $year plus plus. So this is going to auto-increment the value of year by 1, and then we do semicolon, and now we close the squiggly bracket. So we create the variable year here, we set the value to 1. Then we say while year is less than or equal to 10, print the word year, the value of the variable year, break line, and then auto-increment. So look here, the auto-increment happens after the print. So the first time this while loop runs, it will print the year as 1, and then the next time it will print it as 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so forth. If you put the year plus plus before print, so if we put this up here, because you can put this wherever you want, then it would auto increment before you printed the year, and then it would mean it would start at year 2. So just keep that in mind. So we'll put it back. And then all we're going to do is we're going to do save. Then we're going to upload. So now that it's uploaded, I'm going to go to the script. I'm going to refresh. And now look at that. That is what a while loop does. So it prints year 1, break line, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10. And the power of the while loop is, look, that only took basically 3 lines of code in order to happen. If you actually typed out 10 lines of print year 1, print year 2, print year 3, print year 4, that would have been 10 lines of code. Or if you had 100 lines of code or 1,000 lines of code, you would have to print that. You would actually have to write all of that out. With a while loop, that automatically prints it. So that's all there is to this first demonstration. So basically, you create the variable year. We set the value to 1. Then we say while year is less than or equal to 10. Print year, the value of year, year plus plus. So if we did this to 20, all I have to do is I could do that, and now it will loop until it gets to 20. And so it is that simple to change. So with that one simple line of edit in the line of code, it now prints out all the way to 20. Again, this is going to become much more useful in the future, but this is the basic idea right now. So now that you've seen how to simply count using a loop statement, I want to show you a bit of a more complicated program. So now we are going to code a program that is going to show us how long it is going to take to pay off a house. So we are going to start with how much we're buying the house for. We are going to find out what our yearly interest rate is. We are then going to find out how much we're going to pay per year, and then using that information, we are going to see how long it will take to pay off the house. Now again, with these classes, the math may be a little wonky. I want you to understand the concept. The math might not be exact yet, but if you understand how the looping works, you'll be able to do with the math as you wish. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create the PHP script like we normally do. So I've opened the PHP script and I've closed the PHP script here. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create a variable for year. So we are going to be looking for how many years it will take to pay off this house. And so since we're starting with year 1, we then create the variable year and have it equal to 1. So that creates the variable year and sets it to the value of 1. The next thing we want to say is what do we currently owe for this house. So when we buy this house, how much do we initially owe on it? So we're going to say $300,000. So year 1, we are going to owe $300,000 on the house. The next question is what is the annual interest rate? So the annual interest rate is like 3%, 5%, 10%. So the annual interest rate we will say is 5%, so you will be paying 5% on the loan. And now again, as I talk about, we have to do a little basic math. So 5% when we're talking about in decimals, so that we can use it to multiply by, would be 0.05. So 0.05 equals 5%. And then we are going to say what the yearly payment for the house is. So how much are we going to pay on this house every year? So normally we would actually do this by monthly payment, but again, I'm just trying to show you how this works. So what we're going to say is every year, how much are we going to pay for the house? And so I'm going to say we're going to pay $24,000 per year for this house. So if you figure a mortgage payment is $2,000 a month, 2,000 times 12 is 24,000, and that's where we get this from. So we have created the variables. So we need how many years? So we set that to 1. How much do we owe on the house? Well, we create that variable and then we initially set it to 300,000. What is the interest rate? Is 5%, so we put that into decibels, so it's 0.05, and then yearly payment, how much do we pay every year? And it's 24,000. So with that, we have created and we have set the variables for this PHP script. Now the next thing that we are going to do, just to make this seem as if it's a little bit of a program, is we are going to print a title for this script that we're doing. So we're going to say in H1 tag, let's see, house payment. So we are just going to print out on the screen in H1, this is a house payment calculator so people understand what it is. Again, as you start writing these programs, you start making them a little more sophisticated, you need to think about doing things like putting in little titles and little nice things so the people that who are going to be using this know what the application you're creating is. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to print that out. Now we are going to create the while statement. So the while says while something is, continue to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to say while, we say current owed. So while the current amount that we owe is greater than 0, then do. So this is the while statement we're using here in this complicated program. So as this program goes through, we're going to do some calculations, and this program will continue to run so long as the current owed is above more than 0. Because once it goes below 0, then we're done. So after that, we put the little squiggly bracket. So now what we're going to do is we are going to print on the line, and we are going to say year. So we're going to say what year it is. In year number, you owe, and then we're going to print out the value of what is currently owed, and then we're going to break. So basically, every time this runs through the while, it'll say year, Then it'll say the year number you owe, and then whatever the value is of currently owed. So as long as you do this, it'll print out. So the first time this runs, it'll say year 1 currently owed is $300,000. Then after we have printed that out, we then need to recalculate how much is owed. So the first year, we are going to owe $300,000. But the second year, we are not going to owe $300,000. We are going to owe plus the percentage rate minus how much we've spent, and that will come to the total of what we will owe. So in order to show what we now owe, once 1 year has gone by, what we're going to do is we are going to call the value currently owed, again, current owed, and then we are going to have it equal to an equation. So the first part of the equation that we have to figure out is we have to figure out how much you pay in interest in a given year. So in order to figure out how much you pay in interest in a given year, you do current owed times annual interest. So current owed times annual interest equals how much interest you will owe in a given year. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put this in parentheses, because then we are going to add that to how much we currently owe. So we owe plus current underscore owed. And so what this does is it multiplies, so it figures out how much interest that you will owe for the year, and then we add that to the currently owed, and then we put this in parentheses again, so all of this goes in parentheses. Remember, this is all order of precedence in math, and then we do minus yearly underscore payment, semicolon. So what happens here is we are going to call the variable current owed, and we are going to make it equal to, and basically what we're doing here is this first part is figuring out how much we pay in interest. So we figure out how much we pay in interest, then we add that to how much we currently owe, so that comes up to a total, and then we subtract how much we've paid over the year, the $24,000, and that will come to how much we now currently owe on the house. Now, after that, all we have to do is we have to auto-increment the year by 1. So when this happened the first time, it was year 1. Then once the while script goes all the way through, we auto-increment, and now that makes it year 2. And then when it goes through again, it'll be year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10, and so on and so forth. And now all we have to do is we have to close this while loop. Again, remember, everything in PHP is about opening and closing. We open the PHP script, we close the PHP script, we open the condition, we close the condition, and the while loop itself, we open the while loop and we close the while loop. Now, so once the currently owed is no longer greater than 0, it will break out of the while loop, and so the last thing we want to do is we want to say the last year, or when the house is paid off. So we will print year, and then we would say, call the value year, and then we will say paid off. And so whatever year this is, that's when the house will be paid off. So up here is where we create all the variables and we set the values. We have to set year to year 1, currently owed to $300,000, interest rate, yearly payment, so on and so forth. Then down here we say while the value of current owed is greater than 0, squiggly bracket, year, we are going to print year 1, you owe $300,000. Then we are going to change the value of what the current owed is to add the interest rate to the currently owed, and then subtract the yearly payment. Then we are going to auto increment year by 1, so then it'll go to year 2, and it will run through again, and then year 3, and then run through again, year 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on and so forth, until currently owed, that value is no longer above 0. Then it will break out of this while loop, and finally we will print year, the value of whatever year it is, and that it is paid off. So that is the while loop. So now all we have to do is I will hit save, and I will upload this. Make sure it got uploaded. Then we are going to pull up the web page. So bring the web page over here, and we shall see
that this now shows you how long it will take you to pay off the house. So it says year 1 you owe 300,000, year 2 you owe 291,000, year 3 you owe 281,550,000, so on and so forth. Now you can see as we get farther down, we start to get more and more decimal points to the right. So if we wanted to use that round function I showed you before in one of the other classes, we could simply round this number down to the second decimal point. But again, all I'm trying to show you how to do today is how to do these loops. And so it now shows you it will take you 22 years to pay off this house. Now the cool part with loops and why PHP is cool in that is because I can simply go back here to the currently owed, and I can say that the house will cost $400,000. I then can upload that. I refresh, and now we can see that this has changed dynamically. So now it says you owe 400,000, then to 396. So where before it took 21 years to pay off, if we look down here, we now see it's going to get paid off in 38 years. So with a little math loop like we have here, you can very easily figure out how long it will take to pay off something like a house, and it's all done dynamically. So if you look at this and you say it'll take too long to pay off a house in 38 years, you can say, well, what if I paid $50,000 a year for the house? Will that change anything? And I can save, and then I can re-upload, and I can go over, and I can refresh, and we can say that it will then be paid off in 12 years. So by increasing the how much you pay, doubling how much you pay, you can actually pay your house off in a much shorter amount of time. So this is just a little bit more complicated of a program, but now you are again with the if-else statements that I showed you, now with these while loops, you can really start to see the power, and you can really start to see how PHP allows you to dynamically do things that would take you a long time if you decide to try to sit down and hand code them. So with that, let's go back out to the real world and have some final thoughts.
So that's all there is to while loops and auto incrementing. Loops are going to become very useful and very powerful for you very shortly. Loops are a very important thing in PHP programming. So I showed you how to create the while loop. I showed you the parentheses. I showed you little squiggly brackets. I showed you the auto incrementing. Again, all of this is very simple, and as you add this to everything that you know about the PHP programming language so far, you really start to get the ability to do something pretty useful. Now, the important thing to remember again is within the while loops, we do have to use conditionals. So less than, greater than, equal to, not equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Again, most of the time, you are going to be doing less than or equal to or greater than or equal to whenever you're incrementing to a certain point. Because remember, if you're incrementing and you say var is less than 10, then it will stop counting at 9. If you say less than or equal to 10, it will stop counting at 10. Again, depending on what you are doing with your program, one condition might be better than the other, but most people, when they're doing the greater thans or less thans, really want to use greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. But that really is all there is to loops in PHP programming. So as you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy over here for EliTheComputerGuy.com. Again, this class was Loops in PHP Programming, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.